From the start, Governor Charlie Baker has enjoyed enormous popularity among constituents and, frankly, the media. Now, though, some are questioning whether his likability has made it tough for journalists to be tough on him.
After months of battling this horrific virus, the vaccine, as we all know, is finally here, and with that...
Governor Baker has always been a cool technocrat. But for weeks now, his press briefings have been more robotic than usual, with only the occasional question bringing him to life.
Some other states have one giant site you can go on.
Click on it, make an appointment.
No plans to streamline that, though.
How much more streamlined would you like it to be than that?
Well, since you asked.
One of my first questions is, what exact website are you talking about?
That's GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, who was trying to book a vaccine for his dad and was furious no one pushed back at Baker over the state's confusing online vaccine portal.
I spent an hour waiting in a virtual line for Hannaford, only to be bumped off at the end. Then you go to a different graphic where you're clicking on these different stars. Then I finally landed on the main site, which is maimmunizations.org.
The reporter who asked about streamlining did bite back at Baker Online, and a few reporters have questioned why Baker is only now rolling out a hotline for people who aren't computer savvy, a question Channel 5's Sharmin Sacchetti did ask.
For the second time in 2 days, I asked the governor if a call center should be set up.
The phone piece is something I would have liked to have had ready.
The Boston Globe's Joan Vanacki has mused about the Teflon governor herself, wondering why no one held him accountable for a variety of vaccine misfires. I don't know. Maybe bring back Andy Hiller?
What doesn't Charlie Baker know that he's about to find out?
That he's human?
Honestly, Jon Keller, you have missed Andy Hiller, by the way. You've covered Charlie Baker for years. I mean, he's always had, I said, that sort of automatic approach to everything. But this is beyond the pale. Getting up there and reading those endless statements. He can't just look into the camera and speak to the people. And he's unapologetic. He's cavalier. This rollout is a disaster. And I feel like there's been very, very little pushback on him. And, you know, it's only going to, and he's being defensive about the tiered system. There's nothing wrong with the tiered system. The problem is they haven't rolled this vaccine thing out properly, and he's not taking responsibility for it, and the press hasn't held him accountable.
I don't know about that. I think he's been getting some pushback. He's certainly getting it here today, Emily, and he deserves it. It's not exactly been his finest hour, to say the least. And contrary to your introduction there, I don't find Charlie Baker all that likable. I don't think that's the basis of his appeal. Look, the bottom line is Charlie Baker is like the next door neighbor you have, who you might disagree with everything he has to say about politics. But if he keeps his yard neat, he doesn't blast his Twisted Sister records at times when you're trying to sleep. And during a blizzard, once in a while, he comes over with his snowblower and helps you with your walk. I think that's pretty much the sum total of what many, many residents really want and expect from their governor. The insiders and the political junkies go into orbit over this policy gaffe or this veto or that. And fair enough, that's fine. But the fact is, his approval rating by Massachusetts voters in a poll last month dropped from 82% to 73%, and that was considered a big backslide. After 9 months of making unpopular decision after unpopular decision, I think that's amazing, and it speaks to how he just fits the mood of what most people want out of that office.
Look, I do think that there's something to the fact that reporters really haven't been pushing in that hard. I know of an acquaintance who was a big supporter of the governor, and over the last year or so has really turned on him. And one of the things he keeps annoying me with is, why are reporters asking the tough questions every time something comes up? As if I can fix it for all reporters. But I've seen that, at least from this person who was quite supportive of the governor. You know, I wonder if perhaps this has something, and this is just a little bit of speculation on my part. For the past 4 years covering the Trump administration, there was always this sense among reporters of pushing back not only on policies and issues that were surrounding President Trump, but also more conservative politicians. And here you have someone who is moderate. And if you compared him to what was going on in Washington, there wasn't really a whole lot to push back at least with that kind of pressure. And maybe that played into it a little bit, but certainly, and you had some good exchanges there showing that there isn't a lot of heat when the governor stands up at his press briefings.
There was more outrage over Deval Patrick's drapes.
Exactly.
Well, I would say that I think we're seeing some back and forth with the legislature and maybe that would be typical of any governor. But that to me indicates that where there might have been some, I don't know, a give way to him on some other subjects, that people are standing firm. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is this has been a desert during the coronavirus when it hit. And we were all like, what is this? What are we going to do? Where is leadership? Because the dearth of leadership was more applicable across the country, both in the governorships and certainly in the presidency, than any place else. So by comparison, Governor Baker looked doggone good. First of all, he said, hey, we're going to look at some science. Hey, B, we're going to try to figure this thing out. I don't know what it is either. And, he tried to do some things. Now, maybe he wasn't right in trying to do it or in how he did it initially, but he got out there and said this is a problem that has to be solved and a lot of people are involved. All the details of it, yes, he certainly could be criticized for, but there were so many who did nothing and said nothing that I think that there may be what my mother used to call a halo effect. So, hey, we were so glad to be here and not Florida, as I have written personally last year. So we're now just catching up to the fact that, okay, other harder questions have to be asked because this thing keeps going on and we need some other kinds of answers. And by the way, he promotes himself as the guy with the answers, the answer guy. So he should be questioned about, if you're the answer guy, where are the answers?
Well, but Dan, one of the questions I have is, why can't you look in the camera? Why do you have to read everything from good afternoon? He can't even just look into the camera and speak to the issues of the day, like Cuomo or even Trump, for that matter. I mean,
well, that's a style thing. I don't know if I don't know if that's a total fair criticism, because that's a style thing for him.
It's terrible. As a politician, you got to be able to do that.
Well, it hasn't bothered him thus far, so that's all I can say.
Well, he's always been kind of wooden. And I would point out that Charlie Baker's not the only governor who has maintained very good popularity ratings throughout the COVID crisis, despite some mistakes along the way. I would put Governor Cuomo and Governor Newsom in California in that category. And I think, as Callie said, they've all benefited from comparison to what was going on with former President Trump. No matter what else you had to say about them, at least they were serious and showed some empathy. The other thing that I find curious about this is that Mass Inc. Did some polling the other day, and they found that not only is Governor Baker very popular, but so is the legislature.
Yeah.
And if you look back over the last 10, 12 years or so, I think that all our governors and all the mayors of Boston have been pretty popular most of the time. Now, does that mean that we're not as we're easily pleased these days, or does it mean that the media haven't been tough enough?
I don't know, but some of those other governors got a whole lot more pushback.